In Eldoret, everyone knew Aking and Baraka. They were the couple people pointed to and said, "That's love." Baraka was handsome, charming, and successful. Aking was beautiful, smart, and always dressed like she stepped out of a magazine. Together, they looked like a dream. On their 7th wedding anniversary, Aking decided to celebrate in style. She rented the rooftop of the tallest building in town, with fairy lights twinkling above and music floating in the warm night air. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and tiny gold-decorated cakes. Friends and family came from all over to be part of the big night. Aking wore a long, red silk dress that hugged her figure, and Baraka couldn't stop smiling at her. Among the guests was Nia, Aking's childhood best friend, the kind of friend you tell your secrets to. Nia arrived with her little son, Tay, who ran around giggling, holding a balloon. The mood was perfect. Laughter, music, and clinking glasses as people toasted to love. Aking looked around at the happy faces and felt proud. She had built a beautiful life with a man she believed adored her. She had no idea that before the night ended, one small word from a child would change everything, tearing apart the picture-perfect image she thought was real. In that moment, under the golden lights of Eldoret, she still believed she was the luckiest woman in the room. That belief would not survive the night. The speeches were almost over. People had been saying the sweetest things about Aking and Baraka, how they inspired others, how their love was proof that true romance still existed. Aking's cheeks hurt from smiling. The rooftop air felt warm, the night lights of Eldoret sparkling below. She thought the evening was perfect. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw little Tay weaving his way through the crowd. The boy's tiny shoes tapped quickly on the floor as he dodged between people's legs, his balloon trailing behind him. He stopped right in front of Baraka, his big brown eyes lighting up. He stretched out his small arms and said, loud enough for everyone near to hear, "Daddy, lift me." It was so clear, so confident, that for a second Aking thought she had heard wrong. But she hadn't. At that exact moment, the DJ's hand must have slipped, because the music stopped. The beat that had been keeping the party alive just vanished. The room went still. Even the clinking of champagne glasses seemed to freeze midair. Aking's heart dropped into her stomach. It felt like her blood turned cold, her fingers numb around her glass. She looked at Baraka. He froze for a heartbeat, then laughed, a quick, nervous laugh, and said something about how kids mix up names all the time. He reached down and scooped Tay up without even thinking, holding him close like he had done it 1,000 times before. Nia hurried over, smiling too brightly, her voice high and quick as she said, "Oh, he calls many men daddy." But Aking saw it. She saw the flicker in Nia's eyes, that tiny flash of panic before the smile appeared. She saw the way Baraka held Tay, easy, comfortable, like a father who didn't need to think about it. Around them, the guests chuckled politely, some turning away, others pretending to be busy with their drinks. The moment passed for everyone else. But for Aking, it didn't pass at all. It stayed there, heavy and sharp, cutting into her chest. Her mind started replaying the scene over and over, every detail clearer each time. The way Tay had looked at Baraka, not with the shyness of a child toward a stranger, but with trust. The way Baraka's arms fit perfectly around the boy. The way Nia's voice cracked just slightly as she laughed. The music started again, the party noise picked back up, but it all sounded far away to Aking. She kept smiling for the cameras, nodding at guests, pretending nothing had happened. Inside, though, her thoughts were racing. She felt a strange, growing weight pressing on her chest. One tiny word from a child had just cracked open a door she didn't even know existed. Behind that door, she could feel something dark and ugly waiting, something that might destroy the life she thought she had. And though she didn't want to believe it, a quiet voice inside her whispered that this was not a mistake, not an accident. This was the truth trying to show itself. Baraka's laugh was too quick, too thin. "Ah, you know how children are," he said, glancing around at the guests like he was looking for someone to back him up. They mix up names all the time. His voice was light, but his shoulders were tense. The hand that held his champagne glass gave a small shake before he set it down. Nia was already by his side, scooping up Tay's balloon and smiling so hard her cheeks looked stiff. "Oh, don't mind him," she said brightly, her tone just a little too high. "Tay calls many men daddy. It's just a thing he does." She gave a small laugh, but it didn't sound real. It was the kind of laugh you force out when you're trying to cover a crack in the wall. Akying's eyes stayed on her best friend. And in that split second before Nia plastered on her cheerful face, Akying saw it, the flash of panic. It wasn't long, just a flicker, but it was there. The kind of fear that jumps into someone's eyes before they have time to hide it. She also saw the way Baraka was holding Tay. It wasn't awkward or unsure, the way most men hold a friend's child. It was smooth, natural. His hand rested on the boy's back like it belonged there. His grip was firm but gentle, exactly the way a father holds his own son. The guests around them laughed politely, trying to move past the moment. Someone made a joke about kids saying funny things, and the music swelled again. The rooftop light sparkled like nothing had happened. But inside Akying's chest, something had shifted. She couldn't unsee it. She couldn't unhear it. Her mind was already pulling on old memories, moments she had never questioned before. That weekend 2 years ago when Nia and Baraka had both been in Kisumu, just coincidence, they'd said. The times Tay had seemed unusually comfortable in her home, running straight to Baraka with a grin. The way Baraka always found small excuses to buy him gifts, even when it wasn't his birthday. She had thought it was kindness. Now, it felt like something else. Akying forced herself to smile for the cameras and greet guests, but every time she looked over, her eyes went to Baraka and Tay. She noticed little things she had never noticed before, how Tay rested his head against Baraka's shoulder, how Baraka adjusted his hold without even looking, how they seemed to fit together like puzzle pieces. Nia stayed close, talking to other guests, but her hand kept fiddling with her necklace, her eyes darting toward them as if checking every few seconds. The lie had been quick, the smile had been forced, but the truth was still there, hanging heavy in the air between them. And even though the music had started again and the laughter had returned, Akying felt like she was hearing a different rhythm now, a slow, steady beat of suspicion that was growing louder with every glance, every gesture, every uneasy breath from the two people she trusted most. After the party, Akying tried to push the moment out of her mind, but it clung to her like a shadow. Days passed, but every time she saw Tay, she started noticing things she had never paid attention to before. When he laughed, there it was, Baraka's dimple, deep on the left side of his cheek. Not just similar. The same. And when he smiled, it had that same crooked tilt that Baraka's smile always had, the kind that made people say he looked mischievous. At first, she told herself it was just her imagination. Children could look like anyone, right? But then it happened again. One afternoon, Tay was napping in the guest room. Akying was walking past when she heard him mumble in his sleep. His small voice was soft but clear, calling out, "Baba. Baba." The way he said it was warm, familiar, not like a child playing pretend. It made her stop in her tracks. Her mind began to rewind through the years. She remembered little details she had buried without meaning to. That trip to Kisumu 2 years ago, how Nia had casually mentioned she was going for a work thing, and then later, Baraka had said he was also going for a quick meeting. She had thought it was funny that they'd be in the same place at the same time, but she hadn't questioned it. She had even joked about them having dinner together. Now, the memory felt different. It didn't feel like a coincidence anymore. She started paying closer attention, watching the way Baraka interacted with Tay. At a family lunch, she noticed how quickly Baraka bent down to tie Tay's shoelace without being asked, like he'd done it many times before. When Tay scraped his knee while playing outside, Baraka rushed over before anyone else, lifting him into his arms and soothing him with the same low, calming voice he used with their late first child. It was too natural. Too easy. Even Nia's behavior began to seem strange. She was still friendly, still laughing at jokes, still the best friend who knew all of Akiying's secrets. But every now and then, her eyes would dart toward Baraka and Tay, and there was something in her look, something careful, almost guarded. And when Baraka and Nia spoke, their voices always dropped just slightly, like they were sharing something they didn't want anyone else to hear. At night, when Akiying lay beside Baraka, she found herself studying him in the quiet darkness. She wondered what secrets were sitting behind that calm face, what truths were hiding in the spaces between his words. She wanted to ask, but the fear of hearing the answer kept her silent. Instead, she kept gathering pieces, small, quiet clues that, when put together, started to form a picture she didn't want to see. And deep inside, she knew she was no longer imagining things. Something real, something dangerous, was there, waiting for her to face it. The whispers in her head were no longer doubts. They were warnings. And they were getting louder. Akiying had always been good at planning events, but this time, it wasn't about pretty table settings or matching napkins. This time, it was about answers. She told herself she wasn't going to accuse anyone without proof. She needed the truth in her hands, undeniable, unshakable. So she came up with a plan. On a quiet Monday morning, she picked up her phone and started making calls, her voice warm and cheerful. She told her family she was hosting a special dinner to celebrate love, family, and togetherness. She invited Nia, of course, because how could she leave out her best friend? And she made sure Baraka thought it was just another one of her spontaneous gestures to bring everyone together. Nobody suspected a thing. While she was calling people, she was also making other arrangements, secret ones. She hired a videographer she knew from town, a man who had filmed several of her events. She told him she wanted the whole evening captured, from start to finish, so everyone could have memories to look back on. What she didn't tell him was that she was planning to capture more than just laughter and smiles. She wanted reactions, raw and unfiltered. The most delicate part of her plan came next. She ordered a DNA test kit online, the kind you could do at home. But she knew she couldn't just pull it out and say, "Let's test Tay." That would ruin everything. Instead, she disguised it. She found a way to make it look like a harmless, fun science game, for the kids at dinner. She even bought a few extra little science kits so it looked like part of a playful activity. The swab for Tay would be quick and unnoticed, just part of the game. All week, she moved around the house like everything was normal. She cooked with Baraka, laughed at his jokes, and answered Nia's texts like nothing had changed. Inside, though, she felt like a hunter watching her prey, waiting for the right moment. Every smile she gave was calculated, every word chosen carefully so no one could sense what she was building toward. When the day of the dinner came, Akiying made sure everything looked perfect. She wore a simple but elegant dress, the kind that said, "Relaxed hostess," but still made her stand out. The table was set with candles and fresh flowers. The smell of roasted meat and spices filled the air. Guests arrived, laughing and hugging, thinking it was just another evening of good food and family love. Nia arrived with Tay, who ran straight into the house with his usual energy. Baraka greeted them both warmly, completely unaware of what was about to happen. The videographer moved quietly in the background, capturing smiles, conversations, and the golden glow of the candles. Akiying smiled to herself as she poured drinks and passed plates. She knew the trap was set. By the end of the night, there would be no more whispers, no more guessing. The truth would be on the table for everyone to see. And once it came out, nothing, and no one, would ever be the same again. The dinner started like any other. Plates were being passed around, glasses clinked, and the room was full of warm chatter. The candles flickered softly, casting a golden light on everyone's faces. Aking moved from guest to guest, laughing, making sure everyone had enough food. Inside, her heart was beating so hard she could feel it in her throat. The videographer was in the corner, quiet, his camera following the movement around the table. No one seemed to notice him anymore. After the main course, Aking brought out the fun science game. She smiled as she explained it to the kids, her voice cheerful and playful. The children laughed as they took turns with the harmless little experiments. When it was Tay's turn, she handed him the swab like it was just another part of the game. He didn't think twice. A few minutes later, the sample was safely in her hands, and she excused herself, slipping away to where the small portable testing device she'd prepared was waiting. When she returned, dessert was on the table. People were talking, unaware that the moment was coming. Then, Aking stood at the head of the table, holding a single sheet of paper. Her voice was calm, almost too calm, as she said, "I have something to share." The room fell silent. Every eye turned to her. She unfolded the paper slowly, her hand steady. "This is a DNA result," she said. "It shows a 99.9% match between Baraka and Tay." For a second, there was nothing. Just the sound of someone's fork clinking against their plate. Then the gasps came, sharp, shocked, echoing around the table. A chair scraped against the floor. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Nia froze, her face pale. Then the tears started falling fast. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I'm so sorry, Aking." Her voice cracked as she kept speaking, each word heavier than the last. "It wasn't supposed to happen, but we've been seeing each other for years. It started when you were pregnant with your first child." The words hit Aking like blows. Around the table, relatives stared, some with hands over their mouths, some looking away as if they couldn't bear to watch. Baraka didn't say a word. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. Nia kept talking through sobs. She said it had been a mistake at first, that they hadn't meant for it to go on, but it had. Year after year, it had continued in secret, hidden in stolen moments, hidden behind smiles and small lies. She said she had hated herself for it, but she hadn't stopped. Aking stood still, her face unreadable. The camera caught every detail, the tears, the shock, the shame. In that moment, the perfect image of their lives shattered completely, and everyone at that table knew nothing would ever go back to the way it was. 2 days after the dinner, the video appeared online. No one knew who had posted it, but it spread like wildfire. By noon, it was everywhere: WhatsApp groups, Facebook timelines, Instagram reels. The footage showed the quiet moment before Aking read the DNA results, the stunned faces, the gasps, Nia's trembling confession, and Baraka's silent, guilty stare. People watched it over and over, commenting, sharing, adding their own outrage. How could they do this to her? This is the betrayal of the year. Justice served at the dinner table. Within a week, Baraka lost his job. Clients didn't want to be associated with him. Nia's workplace quietly let her go, saying they didn't want the drama attached to their name. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors avoided them. They went from being admired to being whispered about in shame. Even at the market, strangers stared and muttered. Meanwhile, Aking stayed silent. She didn't respond to the gossip, didn't give interviews. She let the world speak for her. But she was working in the background. Her divorce papers were signed quickly, and the settlement was generous, more than enough to start the business she had been dreaming of for years. One bright Saturday, she made her first public appearance since the scandal. Cameras flashed as she stepped out of a sleek black car in front of a luxury hotel in Nairobi. She wore a white fitted dress, her hair shining, her smile calm and confident. She was there for the grand launch of her new business, funded by the money she had taken from the man who betrayed her. As she walked into the lobby, heads turned, phones came out, and the whispers changed. She was no longer the woman who was cheated on, she was the woman who turned betrayal into power.